everybody, and welcome back to our podcasts. Today we are going to be on the theme of scams and what to look out for, etc., etc. I'm here today with Mary as usual and David as usual, and we have a guest here, Jonathan Creaser, who's going to explain all there is to know about the world of scams and scammers. So I'll let everybody introduce themselves, and we'll get straight into the podcast. David.
Thank you, John. Welcome back, everybody. Yes, my name's David. I'm a Saha resident, and today we're going to go fishing.
Hi there. Thanks, David. My name's Mary. I am the Customer Insight Officer, part of Customer Insight team, and deal with everything Get Involved.
And hi, I'm Jonathan Creaser. I'm head of ICT at Saha and look after all the strategy, the security and the day-to-day support.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, okay, let's get into the questions. David, you mentioned fishing.
As we're talking about scams, and we'll be going over to Jonathan to give us some hot top tips later on how to protect yourselves. But we're looking at the various ways in which people try and scam, and obviously those of our listeners and residents that are email enabled and have access to the website, etc., they'll know probably a little bit about that. Those that have got mobile phones, and actually I'm surprised how many people haven't got mobile phones, but those that have will know about smishing and vishing, etc. So we'll be talking perhaps a little bit more about that a little bit later. We'll also be having perhaps a little bit of a conversation about one of the hot topics at the moment, which is people trying to scam you when you order things on the internet, and you suddenly get an email or a text message saying, oh, by the way, you owe us some money for delivery. And yeah, that's a pretty good one at the moment. Also, things about social media. We all think social media is a good place, but I think it's probably one of the most dangerous places in the world. And perhaps also a little bit about those people that are coming around unexpectedly, calling at your front door and asking you for things, etc. So we'll be having a look at those. But anyway, shall we get on to the main topic?
Yeah.
Why not?
Sorry. I just wanted to mention this very morning that I got a text message purporting to be from Royal Mail, telling me that I owe £2.49, or there's a fee
Redelivery
of £2.49, which is a very strange amount, actually. But anyway, I've got used to this kind of thing coming through on my phone, and I have a reasonable understanding of what may be not right, and I know that Royal Mail will not request money in that way through a text message. But it is interesting, when you're really, really busy and you're thinking, oh, yes, I'm waiting for something to arrive. That must be the parcel, and there you are, you're sucked in, you're pressing buttons that you shouldn't be pressing.
Royal Mail are very unlikely to have your phone number to actually send you a text as well anyway. But there is another actual Royal Mail one that I remember. I haven't had one recently, but when you get a delivery that has, obviously you're not home, so you get a card put through the door. I've had fake red cards put through my door from Royal Mail with a phone number, looked legitimate, probably about £40 a second, But even things like that, they are so, for the untrained eye and whatever, you think, oh, I've missed a parcel, I've got to ring this number up.
Yeah.
And then they've got your money.
Interestingly, I was doing some research on this, and things like a text purportedly from your bank, for example, asking you to pass over details of your bank account, etc., etc. Well, I've spoken to several of the major high street bank people, and they say they will never ever ask for login or personal details, bank account details over things like internet or social media or text. So I mean, if you get those, that's a big red flag to start with. Things like postal delivery, I've spoken to DPD, Parcel to Go, Hermes, etc. And again, they actually say that they will never send you a text or an email asking for money for redelivery. So again, if you get those, that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
So I think, well, we got a special guest here, and we got Jonathan. So Jonathan, what I'd like you to do, could you give us some real hot top tips on how to protect ourselves?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for inviting me in today. I think the key areas are where if you do have an email account and you receive an email from somebody, and it might be somebody that you recognize, it might be maybe a bank or might be a friend, or it could just be something that doesn't look quite right. The thing to do is to look very carefully at the spelling within the email, and also look at the email address that it came from, because the scammers, what they do is they use a thing called social engineering by fooling you into thinking that it's from somebody that you know and somebody that you can trust. The thing to do is never, ever, ever click on a link within an email unless you are 100% sure you're able to do that without any risk. Because if you do, that potentially then could take you to a website which could download software onto your computer without you knowing about it, so that then the scammers can start taking information from your computer. Also, there are emails that come in and purportedly from a bank or some other trusted source, as we were just talking about just now, and they may start asking you for your bank details or other information that may give them access to your personal accounts. Secondly, these things can come in by text as well, by text message. And it's really important that if you receive a text asking you to do a particular action, click on a link, or to phone a number back, be very, very careful when you do that, because some numbers that you call back are charged at several pounds per minute. Or if you click on a link, if you're using a mobile phone and you're connected to the internet, there again, it could take you to a malicious site. And so sort of those are the key areas to look out for. I mean, there are other methods that people use, but those are the key things that tend to be targeted at people at the moment. So would you like me to go through a few sort of things that you should do in order to protect yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do is just be aware that this problem exists. And if you do detect a phishing email, then just mark it as junk and delete it. Don't reply to it. Don't do anything with it at all. It's absolutely not worth it. It could be that the scammers have put malicious code into the unsubscribe link. So don't click on that either. Just put it into your junk and that's it. Things you should do if you receive a message on social media. So if you're on Facebook or some other social media and it looks a bit strange, it looks like it's coming from somebody that you know, but it might be a link to a video, or it might be just something that seems a bit strange for that person to be sending you on the messaging system. Don't open it. Contact that person another way and just say, look, you sent me this. Is that okay to open? And just confirm that. Sometimes invitations come through from people that you think you're already linked to or friends with. And these are imposters. These could be people who are using the identity of somebody that you already know and are attempting to link to you. And so, again, be very, very careful of that. And always check before you just simply click and accept people's friendships. If you've got a desktop or a laptop computer, they're particularly vulnerable from viruses. So the thing to do is always to consider installing an antivirus software that you trust. And also with laptops and desktops, there's often many new updates that come out every few weeks. So always make sure you install the latest updates onto your operating system to make sure that you're up to date and safe. In terms of your email accounts, if you have an email account, it's very important to use a strong password with your account. And by that, I mean a mixture of upper and lowercase characters with numbers, using numbers, and maybe special characters. So, for instance, you might start off with a capital, and then you'll have maybe a few numbers and a few characters. Then you might use, say, an exclamation mark or an asterisk or something within the password. different software providers demand different types and different strengths of passwords. So always think about that. One thing to never do is just to use maybe a pet's name or your phone number or anything like that. Don't use anything that's simply easy to guess. I work in IT. I've worked in IT 41 years. And I've been able to guess people's passwords very easily. It's really not difficult. And so always use a strong password. And the other thing to say around that is if you have multiple email accounts or you have multiple accounts, you've got a Facebook account maybe and an email address and you've got an Amazon account, always use different emails for those accounts. That is very, very important indeed. Because if you don't, if a scammer gets hold of your password, then they have access to everything and they'll just basically guess their way through and, things will not be good there. Another thing that's been introduced by many organizations now is a thing called two-factor authentication. Essentially what that is, you have a password to log into your account, but before you are able to get access, a text message will come to your phone with a number on it, and then you put that number into the website and then it will allow you in. It just gives you that secondary protection to make sure that you've got protection there. Two more things to think about. If you've got a mobile phone, if you have a computer, always make sure you have a screen lock function on it that comes into action after a few minutes, because you don't want to put down your device and somebody will come along and just easily get into your device. So always make sure there's a lock function which then requires a code in order to open it again. And finally, this is probably the most important thing, is regularly back up your most important data on your phone and on your computer if you have one. Because that way, if things do go really badly wrong, then at least you'll have something to fall back on. So those are my top tips.
Fantastic. One of the things that when I was looking for information about this, that some of the police forces and I think things like the crime agency, etc., will say if you do get an obviously fraudulent email, send it to them. I mean, would you advise that?
Well, the National Crime Agency, who actually oversee this on behalf of the UK government, they have literally hundreds of thousands of emails sent to them every day. So it's actually impossible for them to actually do anything about it. So personally, I wouldn't advise that. I have tried that in the past in my professional capacity, and you simply get an email back just saying, oh, thank you very much, and look at these tips and just stay safe. I think things could be different if, say, you receive an email from, say, your bank or from a bank. The banks do operate a special email address for fraudulent attempts, and they do record them. So potentially you could do that. But I personally advise just to mark it as junk and delete it, and that's it, because in reality nobody will do anything about it because of the volume.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But it's worth knowing. Okay, one of the things that came up when I was looking at it, I talked about vishing earlier, which was the sort of scams now over the phone where, I mean, I've had it myself where the phone will ring and you're up to your eyeballs in washing or what else, and when you answer the phone, there's a delay and then the voice says, hello, this is, and you think, oh, for goodness sake. And it's obviously probably not your son or your daughter or your mother or whatever phoning you. Is there anything you can tell us about dealing with that, or is it just like put the phone down?
Well, yes, this is a common thing actually, and it might be that, oh, have you had an accident recently, or there'll be lots and lots of different scams. My advice, really, the most simple advice is if you don't recognize the number, so if you have a mobile phone, you'll be able to see the number. If it's withheld or you don't recognize the number, they simply don't answer it. And then what you can do, you can make a note of the number, and then if you go to a website called Who Called Me and look it up, and you'll see whether or not other people are reporting that number if they're receiving calls. So that's the simplest way of doing it. If you have a landline phone, obviously not everybody has got the ability of being able to see the number coming through, but you can buy a service depending on which provider you're with that will enable you to see the number either on a separate device or on a cordless handset. There are, if you want to go to the extreme level, and which is something that I use at home, that actually screens all the calls that come in to the landline and will check the validity of each call. And if it's on a blacklist, then it won't allow the call through. But probably like most people, I do have a mobile phone, and I get very few calls nowadays. So it's becoming less and less of a problem. It's mostly people who've got mobile phones.
Yeah. I think, sorry, I was just going to say that I definitely worry a little for people like my mum, for instance, who's 86. And, you know, she's spoken to me about, I had a call on my landline telling me that my BT account was no longer viable, or they're going to cut the line, or whatever it is they say. And also, you know, inviting her to ring the bank or do this or do that. It's very difficult. She finds it very difficult to know what is a scam phone call and what isn't a scam phone call. And it's quite a worry, really, isn't it? That vulnerable people of any type are being kind of almost preyed upon in this situation.
Absolutely. If I can tell you, I mean, it's not just older people, and anybody can fall for these things. I'll quickly tell you a real life story that happened to my daughter last week. She lived in accommodation in Southampton, in student accommodation, and needed to cancel her broadband. And she's used her mobile phone to do a search for her provider's phone number. Number came up in Google. She just clicked on the link, and that immediately then called her provider. She had a 25-minute phone call with a provider in order to close down her broadband, and that was it. Fortunately for her, I pay her mobile phone bill, and at the end of the month, I received a £204 bill for a 25-minute call. So essentially what had happened there, so, you know, my daughter's 22, so she's young, and, you know, and what had happened was that the number that had come up was being run by fraudsters, and basically they rerouted her call to her provider, and they charged the call at £4 a minute, and they charged a connection fee of £80. The call, actually, they disconnected the call halfway through, so she had to call back, and they charged her £72 for the second time that she connected. So these things really, really happen, and you know, I'm currently talking to the providers about that. But it's an awful situation. Whereas if you're not careful, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah. John, did you have any questions? John?
Yeah, I've got quite a few going in my head at the moment, but actually remembering what I was thinking of before I've actually come across with another one. I was going to say, I mean, obviously not all scams are internet-based or telephone-based. You have your door-to-door people who prey specifically on the elderly. I read about this almost every day, that somebody's knocked on the door, said, oh, they need to... I mean, there are obviously people who would actually just go in and wander around the house and use scare, like tactics, either distraction tactics. But there are people that will still go to your door to door and actually just and scam you that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the use of door chains to see who's at the door, to use those first, and make sure you see identification are the key areas there, aren't they? But
I think it's simple. You just simply have to be so aware these days.
Yeah. And
just, if you've got somebody at your door, you don't know who it is. You're not expecting anybody. Again, if you're going to open that door, you make sure that your door is on a chain, like you would on a telephone. If somebody rings you up, I'd say that if anybody's rings you up and is trying to sell you something, you know it's a scam. Because they're not going to ring you up. I don't think, unless you've actually asked, you've pre-asked for them to call you, and then you would be expecting that call. But these days, I mean, again, David was saying about automated calls. I actually had one yesterday, and I think it was from HMRC or whoever, and they said that I was owing them £400. They said, please speak after the tone. I left them a very rude word and hung up. That's the way I dealt with it. It was interesting to listen to, but I easily recognise the scam these days. It seems to be that anybody and everybody is getting called.
Yeah, I think that's what Jonathan was just saying, wasn't it? Actually, any one of us can get caught out, including, younger people who we all feel are a lot more tech savvy than we are. But in fact, actually, although it's very technical, the way that scammers work, they also work on that intuitive. I can't remember what you called it, Jonathan, something where they know their customer.
Yeah, essentially it's social engineering. And so what they're doing is they're using little bits of information that's available about you on the internet and using it as a bit of a jigsaw in order to fool you into thinking that they know that you know them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the things that came up, Jonathan, when I was looking, we've sort of touched on it, is that the scammers and the fraudsters work on what, almost like the scare tactics. We've had emails and texts and phone calls which says you must do this now, you get in contact straight away. And when you are under pressure of time or family or whatever else, it's very easy to actually fall into that. And the one about you owe us, or there's outstanding amount, £2.40 for us to deliver this parcel. When you're under pressure, it can be quite easy to actually just fall into that trap. So I think overall, and we'll come back to you in a second, overall, it's, if you're not sure about anything, stop for a second, think about it. Does this actually relate to me? Am I expecting a parcel? Am I expecting a phone call, etc.? And then if you're not sure, check and check and check again.
The other one is that if you've had a phone call and it's customer services from whoever, BT, TalkTalk, whatever, and you weren't expecting that call, and they just say, they want to update the system, whatever, and you're thinking, hold on a moment. Well, if this is a legitimate call, they'll be happy for you to hang up, and you can ring them back, but no links. Pick up your last statement or whatever and use the phone number that's on that, and then phone them up and ask them, have you just called me?
Yeah, John, that's an interesting one that you've raised. There is a current scam where fraudsters will phone you on the phone and they'll say, look, you can phone us back on this number and verify that our number is 100%. And they won't actually close the call. So they'll keep the call open, but you won't know that. And you'll call the number, which is the number of your bank. But instead of it going to your bank, it'll basically connect back to the fraudster. So be very, very careful about that. Maybe use a different phone or wait longer. But as you say, no reputable organisation will worry if you're asking them for additional information. And quite often, my advice would be, if you're not expecting it and it doesn't sound quite right, tell them to contact you another way and just don't speak to them.
Something that's been quite handy for me is, I don't know if it's on everybody's phone, but my phone, I've noticed, possibly with an update, that when I get a number ringing me now, it actually, if it's not a local number, it will actually tell me that this phone call is coming from Argentina or wherever in the world. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know anybody in Argentina. Oh, right. I think I'll leave that one, thank you, because also, if you answer the number that rings, I know sometimes people don't even look at their phone, they just answer the phone, but more often than not, and it cuts off, they then know that your number is actually live and working. Of course, they're looking for, they buy these numbers off the internet, so they have automatic dialers, which will just throw out all these calls until it hits a live working phone number. Of course, if you answer it, they know, it's logged on their system that they can use this number, and then you'll probably get more phone calls from other places and people actually on the end of the phone this time talking to you because they know that you're there. If it's a dead number, you don't answer it, they'll probably just bypass it, leave it.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, well, I think that's all the questions that I'd like. Just go back to Jonathan. Jonathan, is there anything else that you really, really like to put over to our listeners and say, this is the last hot top tip, but this is the goodie?
Yeah, right. Well, I think it's essentially being constantly vigilant and always remember that you don't need to respond to something straight away. And as we were saying earlier on, it's essentially these people that make something sound very, very urgent. And so just remember, just stay calm, seek advice if you need to from a friend, or have a think about it, and don't respond. If you're in doubt, just don't respond.
One more thing I'd like to mention, because I don't think we've really covered it, and something that I have become increasingly more aware of on Facebook, social media, but particularly on Facebook, I'm seeing a lot of really legitimate looking adverts for various technical, a watch or just any sort of gadget general that looks really good. And then it says, you've only got 3 hours to order this. We haven't got many left in stock. And they say, and it's only $19.99. Now, I've actually seen a lot of these things that I know are legitimate items where you can actually go and buy this item, but it will cost you like £240. They're using the same advertising, the same photos, but they're selling you it's £20. And I know for a fact that is a scam. Because you're not going to be buying this for £20, and obviously, you said, okay, then I'll take a risk on it. It's only £20, and you'll get a piece of plastic back if you get anything back at all.
Yeah, one of the things I tend to do, John, is have a quick look in that instance and see what other people are commenting on. I think Jonathan's already mentioned that, and unfortunately, there will generally be someone who's been scammed before and will tell you they've been scammed. So it's worth having a look.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you'll also find, David, that I look at feedback, but even in this day and age, even the scammers actually produce their own feedback. They can pump their wares full of absolutely brilliant, great service, great item, and people just see the first 500, it looks like they've got 500 likes and whatever. They're all fictitious.
You never get something for nothing.
Absolutely.
If it looks too good to be true, you can bet that it is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's a good one to remember, I think, Jonathan.
So I think really we need to say to our listeners that if you ever get an email or a phone call that says that it's coming from the podcasts here, asking for £25 to the future, just send all your money to me, Yeah,
don't do that, everybody. Please don't do that. Well, thank you very much for that, John.
Well, it was worth a try.
So it's been really, really interesting, actually, to talk about this. I think it's something that affects everybody now. Scammers, as John was saying about people coming door to door. I mean, you don't even have to have a technical device in order to get scammed. It seems to be big business, and it affects all of us. As Jonathan quite rightly said, just be constantly vigilant.
Okay then, right, we are at the end of this podcast. Just like to thank Jonathan again for coming along and sharing all that very informative information. Is there such a thing as informative information? Yes,
there is now.
There is now, yes. So I'll just leave it down to yourself, Mary and David and Jonathan, to say your goodbyes.
Thank you. Yes, I'll say goodbye to everybody. Thanks again to Jonathan, and we'll be back with another hot topic very soon.
And it's goodbye from me. See you all next time.
And it's goodbye from me. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for coming along today. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.